I'm just teasing. Thanks for having us. So the Mackinac Center has been working on this issue. We first did a report in 1996 calling for criminal convictions before most forfeitures happen. So we're happy that we're taking up this bill today. I will try to be very brief, not number heavy, but I want to talk a little bit about what we've been talking about here with the state report. I have the document right here. This is federal forfeitures that happen in the state of Michigan. To Representative Runstead's point, 80% of the cases happen for incidents below $50,000. 96% of the dollars are for instances over $50,000. The first presentation we saw was at a Michigan State Police report. The prosecutor noted on there that over the last decade, there were $3 million, according to the Michigan State Police, of forfeitures where the money was on its own, not tied up with drugs. That's $300,000 a year in a state where last year we did over $15 million in forfeitures. Making the point, the vast majority of the money in these cases are tied up with drugs where presumably it's easier to get a conviction, or they're dollar amounts where this bill does not affect it. So let's talk about the people that this bill would really affect. It's not correct. Somebody said that it was 10%, according to the report, were people who were not convicted. It's actually 10% for people who were not charged criminally. About half the cases were people who were not convicted. But there were over 500 people and another 200 that were not convicted of something related to the forfeiture. So in 2016, full year we have data, at least 700 people that were not criminally charged or were charged but not as related to ostensibly the law they were breaking related to the forfeiture. I think that's a really important point. We talked a little about the nuances in that data, and Rep. Lefebvre brought up and talked about that issue of somebody that enters some type of plea agreement and they don't get charged. Mackinac Center sent FOIA requests to the state for every one of those cases. There were some like that were example where we got the case file and they would say we entered an agreement where the person gave somebody up, but it was a very small number. Vast majority of those cases, I can send you the document, anyone that's interested, big Excel sheet from the Michigan State Police, and took them and literally FOIA'd the case files. Those were not the vast majority of those instances. They were very small dollar amounts coming from people. And from our position, our side of it is for people, these couple hundred people, very small dollar amounts, we should be establishing these basic rights of getting the conviction before moving on and going through the process of doing the forfeiture. Those are separate tracks. It has nothing to do with what is the standard of evidence in the civil system. It's prior to getting to the civil system, do we require a conviction or not? And we support this bill because it takes care of a lot of those people. So I'll let Kim talk. I do want to make a note that I found Representative Lefebvre very brave earlier for admitting in an entire room of about 40 law enforcement officers that he violates the law when it comes to the crossbow. So I commend you for that, but I'll yield the S for. Yeah.
Thank you, members of the committee. So we've had a lot of testimony on these bills, or on this bill, and I think we've heard kind of the same thing over and over again, same concerns over and over again. But I implore you to look at what those exceptions to in the legislation are, and I believe that every single one of those exceptions have covered these massive concerns. At the core of this is the fact that the foundation of civil asset forfeiture rests on the premise that a violation of criminal law has occurred. And if there's a violation of criminal law, we must first prove in our criminal courts that that violation has occurred. That's pretty simple. And we're not doing that right now. And that's all this bill is requiring. And unfortunately, although we have enacted several laws that have helped move our criminal forfeiture process in the right direction, none of those laws address that issue. So we are still having a violation, a due process violation. We are still taking thousands of dollars from individuals on a regular basis who have not been charged or convicted with the crime. And that is fundamentally wrong. As I want to speak a little bit to the issue about informants. So one thing that we heard law enforcement say is that a majority of the time when they pull someone over and they find all this cash, that person is saying, I don't know where it came from, it's not mine, and they're not running to the courts to then go get that money back. That's abandonment, and that's covered in this legislation. So I don't see that as being a major issue. And I think that we're truly doing a disservice to our law enforcement to permit them and incentivize them to continue to fund themselves through forfeiture proceedings. I mean, the documents show that there's almost 50% of forfeiture proceedings went to personnel, equipment, and I believe and overtime. It's $300,000 towards overtime. That's a problem. And it's a problem that this legislature probably needs to address, but goes much beyond this. But it goes to the core of the issue. And so I understand, no, we don't want to say we're policing for profit. I understand law enforcement's concern around that. But the numbers are there. So I implore you to look at the documents, look at the numbers that are showing, and even if we only have 11 out of 12 months of data, I think it's pretty sufficient information. So we're here to answer any questions, but for timing's sake, we'll just leave it at that and allow you to rely on our written testimony.
Representative Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is, what is magical about the $50,000 mark? If this is bad policy underneath, why is it all of a sudden good policy above that?
The answer I'd say to that is when you look at these cases, 80% of the time the person does not challenge the forfeiture. If you get pulled over and somebody has $60,000, let's just say he's innocent. He's one of the, Ted Nelson, who testified last week when he did this for Mackinac Police. Every once in a while they'd have someone like that. They didn't believe in banks or something, and that would happen. That person is going to go challenge the forfeiture, and they're going to be able to say, hey, I earned this money legitimately, here's my bank records, here's my job record, that kind of thing. But for those cases of those people, again, that are not charged, most of those are such small dollar amounts, even if it's $100 or $400 or $500, they make the very rational decision of not going on and challenging it at all because they don't want to be caught up in the system, they don't know, do I need an attorney, or it's just not worth their time to do. So we are okay with that dollar amount just so that we're not missing some of those big drug guys where you have those problems that you're talking about, and while still those people are going to go on and go through some type of process.
If I may, Mr. Chair, continuing on the same question that I asked earlier today, why wouldn't we allow the changes that were made in 2016 when it comes to clear and convincing to see if that has solved some of our bad actors out there, if that is indeed happening within our law enforcement community? Over the last few days, I made calls to my prosecutor, I made calls to multiple sheriffs, and they reassured me and they said, we'll open our books and we'll show you what's going on. We'll show you exactly how we've used the law as it is laid out today to take criminal activity off of our street.
The answer to that is that in civil court, I actually am not, I don't think that difference of what they made last time was really that big of a deal, because you're talking about the difference, preponderance versus clear and convincing, once you're in civil court. The big deal here, and what we've always supported, and what we're finally doing with this bill, is what triggers having to go to civil court. And our argument is, particularly for these lower dollar amounts, that the onus should be on the state to get the conviction before then going over and determining in civil court, well, where did that money come from? Did he gain those funds from illegal activity or not? So for me and for our organization, the big deal is what triggers going to civil court, and our position should be that the onus should be on the government to prove criminal activity first.
Any other questions? Apparently there's not, so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.